on. Looking back at it, it's pretty neat and humbling just to be a part of that, because it was a pretty big event in the sport of tennis this year.
How much has your life changed since that match, other than having to answer the question every time you face guys like me?
I wouldn't say it's changed too much. I got to do some pretty neat stuff after the match. I went on the David Letterman show. That's something you don't do every day, so I'm going to remember that forever. I threw a pitch out at New Yankee Stadium. So it's just a lot of stuff I got to do because of that match. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have done. So in that sense, that's probably really the only reason. I guess maybe some people recognize me a little bit more, but for me, it hasn't changed me too much. My goal for the rest of my career is to not make that the lasting image of my career, and that's up to me to work on. And the only way I can do that is to continue to do well and do well in the big events, and hopefully win a really, really big tournament.
Got a couple of questions, not surprisingly, about that match from our audience members. This question is, John, when you got to the 11th hour, what were you thinking about? What was the mental battle for you like?
Yeah, it wasn't really, at the 11th hour, I felt like that was towards the end, that was almost the easiest, because after like 5 or 6, I became delirious, and I was so physically exhausted that it got to the point where I couldn't really feel my body out there. The only thing that was keeping me going was just trying to get to the change of ends and sit down for 90 seconds. I was just so tired, and I don't know really what it was. I found myself out there. I just wasn't really thinking, I was just reacting. And the same goes for my opponent, Nicholas, and we were both doing that. We're both doing it so well, too. It really wasn't a match that was littered with errors and bad play. It was a pretty remarkable level of play for 11 hours as well. And I don't really know what kept me going. So after a certain point, I had nothing left physically, but I definitely called on all my mental reserves to pull me through that match. It was something I didn't think I was capable of doing, but I was real fortunate I was able to get through.
Another question coming from the audience, and no surprise, regards to the match as well. A couple of them, I'll hit you with them in rapid fire. What did you do the evenings, of course 2 evenings, that you had in between the 3 days of the Wimbledon match? Did you go out to dinner? Did you go out with coaches? Physical therapy? What was your routine like the night of that match that was continuing?
Yeah, well, the first day we went on late because some of the matches went long. So I want to say we went on around 4 or so, and we played 4 sets, and we split the first 4 sets, and it was dark, so we couldn't play. That happens actually quite a bit at Wimbledon, because there are no lights on any courts except for center court now. So they had no lights. We had to come back and finish the next day, which really wasn't that much of a shock to anybody. So I think that first night I kept a normal routine. I probably went to dinner soon after the match, went to bed early, and I knew I had to just play 1 set, maybe 6 games. I was telling myself the next day that it was going to be 195 games, whatever it was. But then the second day we played and went on the court probably around noon or 1, and all we had to do was 1 set, and all one person had to do was win by 2 games, and couldn't get it done. Kept going, and that match finally got off the court at 8 o'clock whenever it was dark. And I went into the locker room after everything kind of settled down and just sat there. I remember shaking at one point. I was just so exhausted. And last thing I wanted to do was go out to dinner, that's for sure. And actually, Andy Roddick was still in the locker. I think he had played that day. He was still in the locker room. He got me he went out into town and brought me back a bunch of food. So that was my dinner, all sorts of stuff, not even healthy stuff. But I had to eat whatever I could just to put calories back in my body, because I lost so much out there. And I probably left the courts around 11:30 after working with the trainers or whatnot. And tried going to bed a little. I only slept maybe a few hours that night, and fortunately for me, I didn't feel too poorly the last day. I thought I was going to be a lot more tired than I was. And finally, about an hour into that match or something, we finally finished it, and that was just a huge relief, because I honestly didn't know if it was ever going to end.
Obviously, a huge relief that you came out on top as well
Yeah, sure.
after playing for 11 hours. The next question is for Tim. When you see one of your closest friends in this epic match, first of all, where were you and what was going through your mind, knowing John as well as you do?
Well, I was back in Tampa at Saddlebrook, and I was supposed to be doing a workout at the time, and I remember John's trainer was taking me through the workout, and they were switching back between ESPN and ESPNU. And the TV in the gym didn't have ESPNU, so we actually went over to one of the apartments in Saddlebrook and decided to watch it. And we watched it for about 2 or 3 hours, and then they called it for darkness. And I got done with that, and I told his trainer, I said, "Kyle, I'm too tired. I can't work out right now." But yeah, so I watched some of it as much as they showed, and didn't have to work out that day.